Welcome to the Education Innovators Podcast. I'm Eric Byron, and it is my privilege to host this show where I get to talk to folks from all over the world who are education thought leaders and innovators. We'll hear inspiring stories from educators, EdTech founders, AI experts, and others who are fearlessly innovating and delivering unique learning experiences. I'm glad you're here. Let's get started. Was a small sample of the learning experience that Dr. Warren Linger is developing in the Roblox platform. So Dr. Warren is going to explain to us and tell us about this concept of a textbook in a game and how they're developing engaging content, on the free Roblox platform. So keep listening and get in the flow. All right. Welcome to the Education Innovators Podcast. I'm Eric Byron, and today I have with me Dr. Warren Linger. So he's the head of exmersive AI, if I said that right. It's an education startup. Oh, good. All right. And so Dr. Warren has a doctorate in education, and he's applied about 30 years of years of research and practice and publications in learner engagement to building an experiential immersive learning system in the Metaverse using the Roblox Gaming Engine. So, Dr. Warren, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
You ready? This is going to be fun.
Yeah.
It
sounds so good when you say it like that. So looking forward to it.
Yeah. Well, it is exciting to, we're going to talk about Roblox and learning in the Metaverse. I'm in.
Okay.
I love this stuff. All right.
Okay.
So, let's start with a little bit of background here. So you've got this doctorate in education, actually from the University of San Francisco, right?
Correct.
And you had a focus there on learning engagement, and you got into this study of flow. So tell us a little bit about flow and how it applies to education and learning engagement.
Well, flow in itself is that what we call the optimal experience, where you're so focused on something that nothing else bothers you. Time goes by, bomb could go off in the other room, but you're so focused on what you're doing. And I've had teachers when I was growing up that were so good at teaching, they could keep that class in flow. And so I wanted to be that teacher that brought people back to re-experience it. And that was really the beginning, is because I just wanted to be a good teacher that could really help students like me, because I'm fully ADD and I can't pay attention unless it's a really good teacher. So.
Interesting, because I always kind of associated flow more with the entertainment side, right? Certainly in the video game industry, we've talked about flow, but even, if you think about it, whether it's a good book or it's a movie, right, where you get in that space where like everything else has just kind of disappeared and you're in that experience fully. I guess I didn't have as good a teachers growing up as you did, because I don't think I ever experienced a teacher getting me in the flow where, maybe a particular snippet of a class or something where you really got into something and went, oh, class is over already, but never really associated it with flow. So that's kind of cool.
There were very few in my life. So yeah, don't feel like you missed much.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a really, really good teacher. If you got a teacher who could get you into flow in a classroom, setting. So that connection to engagement, right? So engagement is really, I mean, it almost is flow, right? I mean, an extended engagement becomes flow, right?
Yes, it sure does. And when you look at it, how do we get flow? Like you mentioned, entertainment, athletics, chess. But another way that we get it and we can get into flow is talking with friends, and also driving, where we are in that situation where we have to pay attention, but we can get in there. But the talking with friends, how often have you gone out to lunch and lost track of time? And that communication. And so that's really what I was studying, is the communication of the teacher in those classroom experiences. And so that's how I started looking at flow.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that, but you're right. A good conversation can also do that. So cool. So what did you you studied this, you did your
Uh-huh.
doctoral around this. So coming out of that, how did you then apply that in the next, because you spent about 20 years, right, lecturing University of
Mhm.
Hong Kong, and you have your own consulting business. So how did you apply this over the years? This is just a quick note to acknowledge that I edited out some of my conversation with Dr. Warren. We talked for almost 90 minutes, and as great as all of that was, I don't think it's fair to expect you to listen to the whole thing. So, some things we did talk about that I edited out. We talked about the importance of immediate feedback and how well games do that. We also talked about some of his background and how he ended up on the Roblox platform, which is a free platform with something like 77 million active daily users who play on average something like 2+ hours a day. So a lot of students are already there. Okay, let's pick up the conversation where Dr. Warren was talking about his wife, who is a secondary school teacher here in Hong Kong.
My wife is a secondary school teacher here in Hong Kong, and she's a very traditional school, and they have a textbook. In that textbook, they have all these experiments that the students are to do. Well, my wife will take the students into the laboratory, and they will test, is this oxygen? Is this carbon dioxide? So I said, well, can we put that into a game? So we put it into a game, added the animations, added the simulations. It's not the real thing, but we were able to put it in the game so that students could actually try it out. And I was thinking, well, maybe we could just lower the cost of the laboratory. Most of the majority, and I've heard numbers from 60 to 80% in developing countries, most of those kids will never step into a laboratory. They will never see the inside of a laboratory, let alone see the inside at school or anywhere else.
Hmm.
So imagine how many of those students could be brilliant but never got a chance, right? And that's really where we want them to be, is playing, and having some fun as they're learning, because you remember it. Well, what if we can create a simulation in a game where they can learn what they're doing? They can try and they can apply what they've learned, to for higher order thinking, and when we've got that application, synthesis, problem solving, that's where we want them. And now we have the ability to get them there. We talk about, I'm a big fan of Howard Gardner's work with the multiple intelligences. And in all of these games that we're creating, we try to, add the math smarts. We want the interpersonal, intrapersonal, and they have to read, they have to talk. They also spatial, and and we're also trying to get it in there with music and higher learning and higher memory skills. So we're inputting that into the learning environment also, so to help those students learn how to remember things, learn how to learn things in a better way, where they get that instant feedback. And it all comes back to that instant feedback. For example, one day I was teaching a student, and we were in that playground. And in this playground, the student is to answer 5 questions to open 5 doors to get to the next step. Well, the next step was a lava trap on a conveyor belt, meaning you have to jump at the right time to get over the lava. Well, the student is a pretty good gamer, but he kept getting killed on the lava and then teleported back to the rainbow tunnel. And in the rainbow tunnel, all he has to do is just name the 5 parts of a leaf cell. So by the 4th or 5th time that he got killed in this lava trap and teleported back, he knew all of the parts of the leaf by heart. A week later, he's in that game. He goes, "Oh, I know these." Typed them all out, went straight through. But the fact that he made it much better and sooner and faster than he would have if he had just gone, and sat down with a book and read it and said, memorize it. Oh, I'm going to remember this home, which it doesn't
Well,
work for me.
well, yeah, there's that
So,
point there, right? Where, and this is learning engagement, right? It wasn't painful for him to learn the parts of, that leaf cell because he
mhm,
needed to do it to advance in the game. And so he didn't mind. I'll learn
mhm,
this because it helps me in the game. So, and I do think that is one of the things that some educators, they look at games and they go, "Oh, no, 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 we can't play games." But but then you see exactly examples like that where the kids are learning something just because they're playing the game and they don't mind, right?
yeah,
The learning isn't painful, it's not a chore, it's necessary. I want to learn
mhm,
this because it helps me, in the game. And as you
mhm,
say, that recall also, because he had to try multiple times, right? So he had to keep inputting the same information over and over again, but it's interactive. He wasn't just seeing it and rereading it. He had to enter the answers, right? And I think that's part of what just reinforces it in your brain because you have to act too,
mhm,
right? It's not
yeah,
just seeing it going, "Oh yeah, I've seen that before." You have to see it and then you have to react to it and do something. I
yeah,
think that really helps the brain cement those, neurons to say, yeah, I remember this because well, I used to say, write it down,
mhm,
physically or type it out. People would ask me, how do you remember stuff from you listen to a lecture, right? And say, oh,
mhm.
you know, I take notes and then I go home and I type those notes. So now I've done it twice,
Nice.
right? Once writing them, scratching them as fast as I can, but then I go back and I embellish the notes and, really type them, sort them out, try and make sure the notes make sense. Um, Reinforces it. So yeah,
Well, and when you talk about that, the worst thing that I've ever seen happen to education is PowerPoint slides, where the students are given the PowerPoint slides and we just take notes on them. Back in the day, we didn't have PowerPoint slides when I was in school, so we had to write everything down. So when you're talking about seriously
yeah,
scratching everything down, that's important. And now, yeah, when they are typing it over and over, and the same thing to go to the next level. You
yeah.
know, and my wife will give homework assignments to her students. They will go home and write down the answers to the 4 questions, and that's it.
Yeah.
But in a game, they'll do those 4 questions over and over and over to get to that next level.
Yeah. Well,
And
there's another point to be made there too, which is an interesting dynamic that you see in games and kids who play games, right? Is that idea that falling in the lava pit 5, 6 times in a row, is okay. The kid's just like,
yeah,
yeah, this is part of the game. I hit a hard part. They expect this,
mhm,
right? There's going to be, and in fact, it's part of the fun, right? Because now I get such a kick out of when I finally figure out how to jump over the dang lava, right? Ah, I did it. Yay. After 10
mhm,
minutes of sitting here going back and forth over this one spot, I finally passed. And so, so that mindset of failure isn't the problem, right? Every time I fail, I eliminated another way, right, of going
yeah,
at this, right? And I just, all
mhm,
right, that didn't work. Let's try this, right? I got to get a running start and jump,
mhm,
right, or whatever, right? There's, how do I do that, right? So, and you're learning possibly a technique that you'll use later, right? Whatever you finally came up with that solved the jump over the lava thing, right? You may have realized, oh, there's a combination of, you know, button pushing here that does something I hadn't expected, right? Like a double jump maneuver or something, right? That, and again, this is another fun thing about games is unlike most other things where you would get all the instructions up front that would tell you how to jump and how to double jump if there's such a thing, right? I don't want to tell you up front. I want you to figure it out, find it. It's much more rewarding when you find something that nobody ever told you, oh, to jump, hit the space bar, right? They told you that it's no fun. Okay, yeah, I can jump to do the space bar. But if they didn't tell you that, hit the space bar twice and you jump twice as much and you find it,
Yeah.
Cool. I discovered something.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that is so true. And we lose that in education nowadays. We've seriously lost that. The students expect everything to be taught exactly.
Yeah. Before we
Teaching.
go too far, we're going to insert here the video. So
Mhm.
I want everybody to kind of see what we're talking about here because I think it's really important. And anybody who's watching this or listening who hasn't experienced Roblox before, right?
Mhm.
So yes, your interns did some recordings there. So I'm going to put one in here that's from the physics game. So there we had, but this was fun. I did get in and play the game, right? You did
Mhm.
help me do that, which was fun for me. Although you didn't give me a jetpack,
Mhm.
Dr. Warren.
Well, you can go back in there and go to physics 6. You know how to go in there and go
Yeah.
to it because
Okay.
and that's where one of those things where looking for investment, they're like, okay, how are you going to monetize this? And that one's not going to be easy. Just getting millions and millions of users and make a little bit out of Roblox because this is something that's on a free platform. It's very easy for someone else to create their own. But I welcome that because the more people who are adding more games like this,
Mm.
the more students can learn, they can help each other. Right? One example is I was teaching one student and his friend came in because he could see where he was. And after a few minutes, and I just kind of let him go just to watch and see what would happen in the interplay. After about 3 or 4 minutes, my student was showing his friend around the game. Basically, that game is just content that was similar to the content in the textbook.
Mm.
Basically, he's showing his friend around a textbook. When was the last time you saw a 10-year-old say, "Hey, come look at my textbook"?
Yeah.
Right? That doesn't happen. And doing things like the jetpack is you fly around and you have to think about, okay, how long can I fly before I run out of power in my
Fuel.
jetpack?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And so now it's not just how fast can I get to the next question to answer, but also what's my strategy to make sure that I do it in the best way. So there's a little bit of that fear,
Yep.
plus a little bit of that curiosity. And and so In one of your podcasts, and I apologize, I can't remember names of your guests, but one of you guys are talking about at EA, you come up with 10 games and basically one would hit the jackpot and pay for all the others. What does EA do with all those extra games? Because I'll bet there's teachers or students all over the world that would just love to be able to say, okay, this didn't work as a game, but why wouldn't it work as a textbook? Because
So
according to one of my students,
yeah,
yeah,
EA is not really the good example of that because the way EA works is they would kind of prototype something,
hmm,
but not invest in full, development of it unless it really kind of proves out. So they would put a small that their phrase I still loved was fail fast, fail cheap,
hmm,
right? So the idea was put as little into it as you can and prove whether or not it's going to work. And if it doesn't work, throw it away, right? Just get it done quickly, right? Fail fast, fail cheap. And so, yeah, so you would start 10 games and
uh-huh.
maybe 9 of them would fail fast, right? You'd start going and you'd go, oh no, this is too hard. Or, we did some really early prototype play testing and people just didn't get it or didn't think it was going to be fun. So just go throw it away. Which ones did somebody go, oh, that's cool. Is it going to do this? And they really engaged. And then you double down, right? So you take the teams that were working on those other ones and you start building one bigger team and you finally end up with one maybe out of the 10 that goes on. But then of those that make it into the marketplace, you still have probably a 1 in 10 chance that it's ever going to go really big, right? So you still may have games that you launched that at some point you stop developing and say, all right, we're not doing any more updates or new releases of this. We're just going to retire this game. Again, same reason, double down on the ones that have done really well in the marketplace and there's more interest in them. And so, yeah, it's this kind of layered approach. But smaller game companies, though, will, do something, take it to market, and you just hope, right? But we're
Yeah.
talking, 3 to 6 month cycles mostly, right? These are small games that they can get something out there pretty quickly, get it in the app store, see how it's doing, and you rarely just take them down once you put them out there, right? To most of them are free to play anyway. You know, oh, I can for $2 I can turn off the ads, right? Or whatever. Doesn't matter. Once you've made the investment and put it out there, you probably never retire it, which is why there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of games on these mobile stores on these
So
platforms.
now, what you just described is life. As an adult, to be most successful, you got to try a lot of things and be ready to fail and get over it fast. What did you pointed out the lava trap? Be ready to fail, get over it fast.
Yeah,
What happens in education? Oh, you can't fail.
yeah, yeah.
No, right? And
Yeah, we teach
everything's
kids
high
that
stakes.
failure is bad. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And but failure is really progress
yeah,
in the rest of the world. And when they grow up and join the working world, the ability to take one on the chin and then get back out there and learn from it, that's going to be more important by far than just knowing all this information that they're learning to pass an exam.
yeah,
And and I have a lot of degrees, so I can't say that passing exams is not a good thing. But I do realize that even though I passed an exam and I got into a good school that I can brag about to all my friends, or my parents can brag about to their friends, that still doesn't make me that person who can really feel fulfilled doing the job that I am doing. Because am I really learning, and am I able to, you know, use my talents and abilities in fulfilling ways? And so
yeah.
the rate things are changing in the world now. I mean, is it going to slow down? No, right?
So, but let's go back to your comment about the, monetization challenge around this because it's a free platform. There are developers making money in Roblox,
oh
right?
yeah.
And so there's a whole marketplace there. But I mean, my experience, right, was now I haven't done any development in Roblox, but I have gone in and played around a few times just to familiarize myself with it. And it's this massive environment, right? There's all these different
Huge.
games you can play, but many of them, right, they make you spend, they call them Robux, right?
Mhm.
So if I want to play your game, I've got to put some Robux on it,
Okay.
right? Now, that's a currency in the game, but it also you can buy with real money
Mhm.
Robux, right? So it seems to me that there is, I mean, they've set up a marketplace specifically to support this kind of monetization. So it does feel like at some point you could have a kind of
Mhm.
paid version and a free version, or you get through a
Or
certain amount of it. And then if you want to keep playing,
mhm.
it's a few Robux to keep going or to buy more jet fuel for my jetpack,
Jetpacks. Yeah.
right? That
Yeah.
kind of thing, right? And there's a whole bunch of discussion you could get into philosophically around microtransactions and is that evil? And kids will spend, right? This is a problem. I had a good friend whose daughter was kind of obsessive about playing Roblox. He said if you
Mhm.
just left her alone, she would play 16 hours a day. She was in the system, but he had her on a budget at least. So, because, yeah, because she would want to buy more Robux so she could go do these other things or upgrade
Mhm.
her character and buy new outfits in the store and show off to her friends that she had a new hat or whatever.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, these kids can spend, but they can also earn, right, by
Mhm.
creating stuff themselves and putting it in the market so that this using the studio, they can produce stuff. And so there's a whole economy there with the kids also. And in fact, I believe this friend's daughter actually did create some of her own stuff in there and was earning Robux for herself so she could spend them on the other things she wanted to do in the game. So
Yeah.
anyway, it seems like there's a way. Um, and another
Well,
thing we
and
we talked
there
about the other
is.
day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
sorry, just I had asked you about the ability to do like an AI chat bot within
Mhm.
it, and you said they don't allow it. But I did some more research on that, and the the catch is that they're concerned with content, right? So like even kids with they message each other, whatever, right? And any messaging you have in your game, in your app, it has to pass certain content
Moderation.
filters, right? Moderated thing. And so if you're going to put a chat bot in there, right? If you're going to embed one, which you can
Mhm.
do with like API calls or whatever, the trick is that you have to also moderate the output from it. So what the kids can prompt, so in and out, you just have to catch it and say, oh, okay, we've passed Roblox moderation requirement
Mhm.
here by catching it on either side and just making sure there's nothing offensive
Yeah.
in that discussion. But it's
Yeah.
possible, and apparently there are people doing it. So anyway, I just thought that would be a really interesting addition to what your system is doing. My own just playing around
Mhm.
just for a few minutes in there. But if you had a chat that I could go in and say, okay, I'm kind of guessing at the answer here. And even though I may have guessed right and the door opened for me, I don't understand why my answer was right. Can you help
Yeah.
me? You
What's
know,
going on?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, with
And
this, right?
well, and that's what we've been looking at is the API call. The actually putting the large language model into Roblox is where we were struggling. So we're doing the API call and just creating another server and doing that. So, but the moderation is going to be going in and out. So we need to make sure that we're compliant with Roblox because it's kids,
Yeah.
and I have no problem with it. And I think we talked about it the other day. Is my goal is to be able to do more of a Socratic method type bot
Mm.
that it's AI, but instead of just giving them the answers, it will ask them questions to help them come to the answer. And so thanks for reminding me of that. That,
Yeah. But
yeah.
and in the context of what you're doing, because it's kind of the textbook, right? You're
Mhm.
basically feeding the chatbot all the material from the textbook. So it's in context, right? It's not going
Mhm.
out and searching the web for answers to your question. It's taking the answers directly from the material you've provided to it, right? Kind of closed box on that side of it.
Mhm.
So it can only answer within the context of the material
Yeah.
you give it. So anyway, yeah, but to me, that would also really up the game, right? The
Mhm.
experience then would, I think, really go to another level. Um, Although it's
And
very fun. I was really impressed. I'm also, because I haven't done any development. So tell me a little bit about the tools there. How hard is it? How much effort does it take? I mean, you've got quite a lot of content in there already. And how is that done?
basically, we just went out and found maps. What we call a map is there's a in Roblox, each game is called a place.
Okay.
We would take and there's a toolbox in Roblox, and as you mentioned, that's where your friend's daughter's probably selling her content in the toolbox.
Okay.
But there are, pay for a map, or you get one that's not quite as nice but for free. So we're just getting all the free maps. We just and I did the code, and I went on to Fiverr.com and had them help me with any code that I couldn't do. I mean, because I know enough to get myself into trouble, and that's it. But I'm
Is the
not afraid.
coding in Java, JavaScript?
It's in Lua, which is
Lua.
similar to C++.
Okay.
So it's similar to a Unity platform.
Okay.
But that's the coding, but it's object oriented, and many of the primitives or the objects that are in there, just go find a map, then place the questions around the map, like in the space
Yeah.
physics where you're learning about space and physics in space. But then you find it, just put them in there. Things like adding points and a timer and having uh, the best score for a level or a place, those are a little bit more advanced, but still not impossible. I've thrown all these crazy requests at my interns who don't have Roblox backgrounds. A couple of them are uh, data science majors at local universities. And so they are actually, they're the ones helping with the bot and finding and setting up a host, because that's, some priceless information for players, obviously, and a teacher. Because as I demonstrated to you last time, we're setting up teacher mode where a teacher can go in and teach in what we call a private, or private server. So in that private server, only the teacher and her or his students can go into that server. And so now they're doing it, and they're in there. The teacher teaches, all the students are frozen, and on the screen they can only see the slide, right? And then as soon as the teacher is done teaching, and one of my criteria is the teacher is teaching for only a few minutes each time. But once she or he is done teaching, then the students go out and apply. They try these things. They actually see, do I understand this?
Right.
And then after a few minutes, the teacher can do the same thing, freeze the play and go through another few slides, and then they go out and try it.
Yeah.
This back and forth is much more engaging than watching, you know, during COVID, the teachers would teach for 20 minutes, and then the students would do kind of the application work on their own computers.
Yeah.
But
So,
and
well, it
some
reminds me of another piece I wanted to make sure we cover here, and I know we're almost an hour in here, is this idea of data collection and metrics. So,
Mhm.
games inherently, right, collect a lot of data about how somebody is playing, right? What decisions are they making? How long did they stay here? How quickly did they advance, right? How many times did they fall in the lava, right? Did they give up? Or did they eventually solve it, right? And game designers use all of this data to kind of tune and tweak the game, right?
Mhm.
Maybe the lava jump thing was too hard, and many of the students are getting frustrated with it, right? So I've got to figure out how to dial that challenge back a little bit, right? You don't want it to be too easy, but you don't want it to be too hard either. And so, but in terms of learning, and for a teacher to also be able to see, right, it's not just you got the answer right, here's your score, because score to me is output, it's not outcome, right? Outcome
Oh yeah.
is, did you gain confidence? Did you, really grasp this? Are you guessing and happen to guess right? Or did you, you really know this stuff, right? So, and how did that demonstrate that you really know it? And so, yeah, talk to me a little bit about that data you're collecting, and how that is used or exposed for teachers to be able to see.
Well, the idea is to, just like when I was using the Google Forms to teach from, is instantly I can see how they're doing, I can see what they're doing, and with that output, I can tell, okay, well, most of the students really struggled and they had to do this question over and over again. Maybe there's a problem with the question, right? And I can say, well, if these students are doing well, or it's too easy, they're all getting it right very quickly, then the question. We can also do things like looking at, I don't know, answer speed, answer confidence, and that's going to be more of an AI kind of tracking. And that one's, I think that one's going to be our phase 2 or phase 3 of the game. But that really is going to be much more valuable than just, did they get it right or wrong, or how often did they get it wrong? Because now, what do? You put questions in a book. I know in the US, the ACT and SAT, they put 1 out of 5 questions is a sample question for them that they're getting in, but
That's
they have
right. Yeah.
millions of students that are taking that test, and they get the analytics, is it valid and reliable?
Yep.
And so with a game like this, we want to do the same thing. We want to be able to get those answers and the behavior, because if we can learn to look at someone's, I mean, I guess Facebook's been doing this for years, where they're looking at your facial expressions and they see that people are more focused when there's a video than when they're reading, then they start promoting or putting things into your feed based on your facial expressions.
Well, that's
Um,
frightening to think that they're watching us when we're on our
well,
computer, but hopefully not.
yeah.
Unless you've given them
Well,
permission to turn the camera on and look at me while I'm looking at the screen. But well, anyway, no,
and
that's it's interesting, thought process there on. So I don't think you need AI
mhm,
necessarily to do that analysis. I did this in the games I did for the Polytechnic University.
uh,
I just put timestamps everywhere. So
mhm.
you clicked on something, it recorded the time, right? Then the next thing you did, it recorded the time again, and I could just mathematically look at it and go, all right, what was the time difference between those two clicks, right? And is that within a normal deviation, or are you kind of outside the normal, right, curve for
Yeah.
that,
So, oh,
right?
wait,
So
this one is, well, everybody's taking way too long on this one. So,
right,
yeah,
exactly, right. Yeah.
yeah.
So we could tune that way. But the other question it raises for me is, so testing and iteration, right? You need
Mhm.
kids to play the game to do any of this analysis. So how are you finding kids to play the game and be your guinea pigs, if you will, see if
Yeah.
it's working?
Well, right now, every kid that I run into, I mean, I teach my Sunday school youth, and I tell them about it, and they're like, "Really, where's it?" So every kid I run into, and they're inviting their friends, which is a really good thing.
Hmm.
Uh, But the main thing right now is we're just getting up and running, kind of the full phase 1, and now that's our next challenge. Because Roblox has 77 million daily active users playing for 2.3 hours a day, there's a lot of possibility there. We're just getting some initial traction.
Discovery in the platform,
And
right? Yeah.
and Roblox is pushing a lot of education. So, and basically, I think we have 50 users a day in an education game, and they'll start posting us on their education games board. And
Right.
so,
50
getting
doesn't seem
getting
like a lot compared to 77 million.
yeah,
Yeah.
and but it's daily users, and but that's an education. I mean, if you want to be on their sports game or innovation games, you got to have a lot more because there's a lot more
Right. Right.
competition there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're definitely in the education space there. I would think you qualify
Mhm.
without doubt on that piece.
Yeah.
So cool. The other, question conceptually here. So integration with actual curriculum. Do you see this at some point as being something that a teacher would take on and say, oh, I'm teaching, this curriculum, and so you kind of based it on your wife's right textbook
Mhm.
thing. Are you hoping that schools will want to take this on as supplementary? So I'm teaching this course. I'm not going to abandon the textbook and just have them learn it in Roblox, but maybe introduce it to the class and say, oh, you get extra credit if you go and you play it in Roblox, or we're going to dedicate part of the class time to doing it in Roblox. Is that kind of the vision there?
That's why we created the teacher mode, is so that a teacher could teach either, face to face or there in the classroom, where you're just getting those students, you know, aware that this is here and it's an extra added value, kind of like Edumentum or the other one out of New Zealand, where they basically um, they offer pretty much interactive exercises to help students you know master the information. And these companies, they do the time step thing. They actually say, okay, how much time are you on and how many questions are you answering? And therefore, it's like, okay, you've been on for 2 hours, but you haven't done anything, right? That means you're not educated. But and and even tracking the movement around the place, that if I'm watching a video, I don't have to watch it, right? I can say I watched it. I can tell the teacher I watched it, but
Right.
I don't have to watch it. But moving around a game, you have to keep your fingers moving.
Yeah.
And it's like, I guess the same as when you're turning a page in a book, but you know, turn a page and that's it. You don't have to do it unless you
Yes.
do the speed reading thing. But yeah.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I could, and another piece I had to put in my metrics, by the way, was I did have a kind of threshold for the time. So like if somebody, stopped, right? So they were in there playing and then, they got a text message and they went on, they did something else and then came back, right? If it was longer than 60 seconds, I trimmed it at 60 seconds and just said, okay, I don't know.
Boom.
Right. Yeah. What were they doing? Right. They may have gone, to the bathroom or something and just left it sitting there. And I don't score that as 10 minutes, on
Yeah.
that activity. I capped it at, 60 seconds or whatever and just said, okay, this one's, you know, they
And
abstracted, but it was still on the screen. Yeah.
you have a great point, because inherent in a game, everything is measured, everything is trackable.
Yeah.
So those schools who want a specific aptitude or those areas, because I'm pretty sure that the world's going to change more and more and more. I think we're all
Yeah.
agree on that. But how much longer is the traditional way of taking tests? Could this be the next generation
Yeah.
where we move it into more of an interactive, more simulated environment?
Yeah. Well, the other
You
thing that occurs to me that might be an easier get than the schools are tutors,
know,
right? It's like there's a tutor center, on every corner, it seems like in Hong Kong, right? You walk through the little mall and there's three in my building, right? And so, those guys, would they be interested in using something like this to say, oh, well, we're teaching kids English tutoring thing, maybe to help the tutor keep that engagement level up. They use
Mhm.
it as not all the time, but they have certain exercises and the kids come in and they go, oh, okay, let's Put up
Okay, yeah,
Roblox and go in and play this sequence, and the kids practice their English,
mhm,
communicating, collaborating in a
yeah,
multiplayer Roblox session. Yeah.
yeah. And they can practice most of the more popular languages. I don't know how many Roblox has, 30
Yeah, I
or
don't know.
40 different
I know they
languages,
have a
something
partnership with Tencent for the Chinese version.
like that.
Um,
Yeah,
that
yeah. So,
yeah, they've got that market going now too.
but
Yeah.
back to your question, the students love it, but there's that mindset, it's a game. And the parents, and one of the things that we tested a lot of different ideas. And one of that we have focused on is exam preparation. So it's set up to actually do that exam preparation in the game or in the games.
Mm,
And we've approached a few tutor centers, and it comes back to that mindset. Once we can prove, we've got the analytics that show, hey, these students are learning this much and they're doing this much better, then I see that as being a great
yeah.
alternative.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to have that evidence that it works in order
Yeah,
to, and I know it's kind of a chicken and egg problem then, right? You got to get enough students
yeah,
to play it in order to tune it and gather that data and prove that it works. But I believe you're going to get there. I love the concept. I think it's, it's really good, and it's great to be able to leverage a platform like Roblox where you don't have to create the whole thing from scratch. And you say you got 77 million daily users are in there who may discover it anyway and just go and, even if you're not monetizing it, if they're helping you just by playing and you're getting stats and you're getting feedback, right? The importance of feedback, both for the students and for you guys. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, and what they're doing. That's awesome.
And then teachers and then the parents in the future too. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
So cool. And, I just had the experience. I've got to post something on this. I went and did the Vision Pro demo thing at the Apple Store because it's
yeah,
it's now
yeah.
available in Hong Kong. They just made it available here where you can buy them. And so I
Mhm.
haven't bought one yet. I haven't pulled the trigger, but I did go in and do the experience. And I'll tell you, I don't know. I didn't ask them if Roblox is available in Vision Pro as an interactive experience, but something like that would be just unbelievable because, it's so real. I mean, you are
Mhm.
right there moving around, and yeah,
It's
it's not
very
VR
immersive.
necessarily, but it can be like VR
Yeah.
at times. Yeah.
I think there is a place that I can check that I would like the games to be VR, but we wanted to start somewhere,
Oh yeah. Yeah. You don't
where
start
we
there,
can.
but
Yeah.
um, but it'd be cool to think about that at some point.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, all of this stuff is, imagine, I say to my students, a thousand, right? People, 1,000 years ago, we think of them as primitive. That means 1,000 years from now, what are they going to think of us?
Oh, 100 years from now, we're going
A
to look like
100 years from
primitives. Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, like, yeah. So even 150 years ago, the richest man in the world couldn't fly to New York.
Yeah.
The King of England couldn't hop
Yeah.
on a plane and go somewhere. So,
Yeah.
yeah, maybe we should change that to 20 years from now. They're going to think primitive, but yeah.
Yeah. It
So,
was getting exponentially faster, the rate of change. It's
yeah.
kind of scary. But anyway, anything else you wanted to comment on?
I do want to, before we go, thank you
Yep.
for this honor to be on your podcast and
Oh,
to help further this cause,
yeah. Well,
education
thank
and
you.
innovation.
Yeah. No, this is important. Innovation. Exactly. We got to keep trying to break the mold here and get better and better. All right.
Fantastic.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye, Eric.
I think this is a great glimpse into the process of innovation and creativity. The learning experience we saw is still a work in progress, but I love that Dr. Warren and his team are leveraging Roblox in this way. Go where the students are, right? We don't always have to create something from scratch or invent some completely unique experience. Start with what's manageable and then iterate from there. So as Dr. Warren points out, right, you need to be ready to fail and learn from that failure and adjust. I see in Dr. Warren here a brave and entrepreneurial spirit, and we need this throughout all of education, all of our teachers. We also need to be teaching this kind of entrepreneurial spirit and innovation, creativity to our students. So, as I've said a few times in this podcast and on posts, there is no innovation without experimentation. So go and try, right? In this case, a textbook and a game. Why not? Just do it. See what happens. I'm Eric Byron. Thanks for listening to the Education Innovators podcast. Thanks to Dr. Warren Linger and to all of those education innovators out there. You are making a difference.